Hello, everyone. Today we're going to step into a moment that should have been filled with joy, but instead, it trembles under a quiet, unseen storm. The morning sun spills through the curtains, software golden. It dances on the edge of my wedding dress, the one I had dreamed about for years. I'm sitting in front of the mirror. My hands are steady, or at least they pretend to be. The air smells faintly of roses and hairspray. Everything looks perfect. Everything feels almost perfect. Almost. Because deep inside, there's a whisper, small, persistent. A question I don't want to ask myself. Why hasn't he called? My phone rests on the vanity, silent. No, good morning. No, I can't wait to see you. Just nothing. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. And tell me in the comments, where and when are you watching this story? Because I want to know how far my words will travel today. My bridesmaids laugh in the background. The photographer clicks away, capturing the glow, the smiles. But the sound feels far, like I'm listening from underwater. The lace on my dress feels heavier now. My veil, pinned to perfection, tugs slightly at my hair. I adjust it, just to keep my hands busy. Outside, a car door slams. My heart jumps. Footsteps rush toward the door. But it's not him. It's my maid of honor, breathless with excitement, carrying a bouquet. She says he's on his way. She says everything's fine. Her smile is big enough to fill the room. But her eyes, they shift too quickly. And in that moment, I realize something. I'm not nervous because I'm getting married. I'm nervous because something feels wrong. And I don't know yet that by the end of this day, everything I thought I knew about love will be broken. I remember the first time I saw him. It was raining. Not the soft, gentle kind, but heavy drops, warm, relentless, filling the streets with the smell of wet pavement. I was late for a meeting. He was standing under the awning of a coffee shop, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a cup, steam curling upward into the humid air. Our eyes met for a second. He smiled. Not a polite smile, but the kind that makes you feel like the only person in the world. I should have kept walking, but something about him made me pause. The rain didn't matter anymore. The meeting didn't matter anymore. We spoke, simple, harmless words at first, about the weather, about how the coffee here was overpriced. But his voice, it had a calmness to it, a warmth that felt like home. By the time the rain stopped, I realized I was laughing. Really laughing, the kind you feel in your chest. And when he offered to walk me to my office, I didn't hesitate. We talked about books, music, places we wanted to see. He listened. Not just nodded. He really listened. And it made me feel seen. From that day on, he became a part of my routine. Text messages in the morning, late-night calls that ended with sleepy goodnights, dinners that turned into hours of conversation. I told myself this was rare, that meeting someone who fits into your life so effortlessly was fate. He told me I made him believe in meant to be, and I believed him. Looking back now, I realize how quickly I let him in, how willingly I opened every door to my life, but at the time, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. I didn't know then that every moment I fell deeper for him. He was building a different kind of story, one that would never end the way I imagined. It happened on a night that already felt special. The city lights shimmered like scattered diamonds across the water. We had been dating for a little over a year, long enough for me to know his rhythms. The way he'd brush his hair back when nervous. The way his eyes softened when he was about to say something important. He'd told me we were going out for dinner, nothing unusual. Except, he insisted I wear the red dress he'd given me on my birthday. The one that always made me feel bold. Alive. The restaurant was perched on a rooftop high above the noise. Candles flickered against the night breeze. Soft music floated between tables. And there, at the center of it all, was a view that made you forget the world existed. We ordered. We laughed. We sipped wine like the evening had no end. And then, the lights dimmed just slightly. The music shifted into something softer. He stood up, walked to my side, And before I could ask what he was doing, he was down on one knee, gasps from the tables around us. Every pair of eyes seemed to be watching. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure they could hear it. He took my hand. His voice was steady, but his eyes were glassy. He spoke about the day we met, about the way I laughed, about how he couldn't imagine life without me. Every word felt like a thread pulling me closer to him. When he asked me to marry him, I didn't just say yes. I felt it in my bones, like the word had been waiting at the edge of my lips since the moment we met. Applause, cheers. Even the waiters joined in. He slid the ring onto my finger, perfect fit, perfect sparkle, and kissed me like the world had narrowed down to just us. It was the kind of moment people dream of, the kind that plays in your mind over and over, like a favorite song. And for months afterward, whenever I looked at that ring, I saw only one thing, a future I believed in completely. I didn't know that somewhere far beyond my view, there were already cracks forming in the picture-perfect life I thought we were building together. From the moment I said yes, my life became a whirlwind of flowers, fabrics, and endless decisions. Every free moment was spent on Pinterest boards and bridal magazines. I wanted it to be perfect, not just for me, but for us. He seemed just as excited. At least, at first. He came to the cake tasting. He nodded along at the floral arrangements. He even pretended to care about chair covers. We picked the venue together. An old stone church with sunlight streaming through stained glass. I imagined walking down that aisle, his eyes locked on mine, the rest of the world fading away. We argued over small things sometimes, like whether the invitations should be cream or ivory. But I told myself that was normal. Weddings are stressful, couples bicker. There were moments, though, when his attention seemed to drift. He'd check his phone during meetings with the planner. He'd disappear for hours, claiming work emergencies. I told myself not to overthink it. We were both busy. We were both tired. But every time he missed a fitting or forgot an appointment, a quiet unease began to grow in me. I pushed it down. Because love, I thought, means giving the benefit of the doubt. My friends teased me about how obsessed I was with the details. And maybe they were right. I clung to the vision of that day, as if making it perfect could guarantee our happiness. I didn't see it then, but I was building more than a wedding. I was building a stage, a perfect scene, for the most imperfect truth to reveal itself. It started as small, almost harmless comments. A friend would say, "He's been hard to reach lately, hasn't he?" Or my cousin would ask, "Are you sure he's ready for this?" I laughed them off. Of course he was ready, he proposed. He talked about our future. He picked the church with me. But then, the tone changed. The questions came with lowered voices, glances exchanged between people when they thought I wasn't looking. One night, my maid of honor called. She hesitated before speaking, said she saw him at a cafe, not alone, with a woman she didn't recognize. They looked comfortable, too comfortable. I told her it was probably work, or maybe a family friend. I said it quickly, as if speed could turn it into truth. But the image stuck in my mind. Him leaning forward, her hand brushing his, the way he smiles when he wants someone to feel special. More whispers came after that. My brother hinted he'd seen messages on social media, flirty, late-night exchanges. A coworker mentioned spotting him in a different part of town, far from the office. Every warning felt like a stone in my stomach. But love makes you stubborn. I decided they were just jealous or overprotective. Because if I believed them, I'd have to question everything, and I wasn't ready, not yet. The rehearsal dinner should have been pure joy. Family gathered, friends laughing, the clinking of glasses and the scent of roasted herbs filling the air. I wore a simple white dress, not too fancy, just enough to hint at the celebration to come. He was there, of course, but he felt elsewhere. His smile came late. His laughter didn't quite reach his eyes. Halfway through the night, I noticed him step outside, phone in hand, head bowed. He stayed out longer than a call should take. When he came back, his expression was different. softer, almost guilty. But when I asked, he said it was just a friend checking in. The kind of answer that leaves no room for follow-up. Later, during the run-through at the church, he kept glancing at the door, like he was waiting for someone, or hoping someone wouldn't come. My maid of honor caught my eye more than once. Her expression was careful. Too careful. When the rehearsal ended, he hugged me. Tightly. Almost desperately. And for a moment, I thought I felt fear in him. Not of losing me, but of something else entirely. That night, as I lay in bed, replaying every smile, every glance, every moment, I felt the first real tremor in my heart. And I couldn't shake the thought. Maybe I didn't know the man I was marrying as well as I believed. I woke up before my alarm. The light was pale, almost silver, seeping through the curtains. It felt like the world was holding its breath. I reached for my phone. No messages. No, "Good morning, my bride." Just nothing. I told myself he was probably busy. Maybe tying up last-minute details. Maybe surprising me. The house was a swirl of motion. Makeup brushes dusting cheeks. Hairspray clouding the air. Laughter echoing down the hallway. But beneath the music and chatter, I kept listening for my phone. Every buzz from someone else's device made my pulse jump. Every minute of silence made it worse. Around 9, my maid of honor stepped into my room. She tried to smile, failed, said she'd been calling him, but his phone went straight to voicemail. I laughed it off. Or tried to. Said maybe he turned it off to focus. But the sound in my voice wasn't convincing anyone. An hour passed. Then another. The florist arrived, arms full of roses. The photographer snapped pictures of the dress, the rings, the shoes. And still, no word from him. I kept telling myself he would appear. That the story I believed in for 2 years wouldn't crack now. But deep down, somewhere I didn't want to admit, I felt the first threads of my world starting to unravel. The church was glowing, candles lit, music swelling, every face turned toward the aisle. I stood just outside the heavy wooden doors, my arm linked with my father's, the lace of my dress brushing against the polished floor. My heart pounded, not with nerves, but with a strange, sharp edge of unease. The coordinator leaned in, whispered, "They're ready for you." The doors swung open. A wave of warmth, perfume, and anticipation rushed toward me. I stepped forward, the train gliding behind me. Halfway down the aisle, I looked up and froze. He wasn't there. The space where he should have been. Empty. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The music faltered. My father's grip tightened, but his eyes told me the truth before anyone said it aloud. The best man stepped forward, face pale, voice trembling. He whispered something to the priest, who cleared his throat and announced, there would be a slight delay. People shifted in their seats. Whispers like tiny storms began to swirl. I felt every stare, every question, every pitying glance. Minutes crawled by. The best man returned, this time avoiding my eyes. And then, quietly, so only I could hear, he said, "He's not coming." The words didn't land all at once. They echoed inside me, bouncing off the walls of everything I thought was real. I stood there, in my wedding dress, in front of everyone I loved, with nothing left to walk toward. It was my maid of honor who finally pulled me into a side room. Her hands were cold. Her eyes, wet but steady. She told me what she knew and what she'd suspected for weeks. He wasn't just having doubts. He wasn't overwhelmed by the wedding. There was another woman, not a stranger, someone from his work, someone he'd been seeing for months, someone who, I learned, he had taken on trips I thought were business. My chest tightened, as if the room had lost all its air. It wasn't just that he'd left me standing there. It was that he'd been building an exit long before I'd put on the dress. I asked the questions you always ask when you're desperate to make it make sense. Was she prettier? Was she younger? Was she better in some way I could never be? But the answers didn't matter, because the truth was clear. He had made his choice. He'd been making it for months. And I had been planning a wedding for a man who was already planning his escape. The betrayal wasn't just in his absence. It was in every lie he'd told to keep me believing in something that was already gone. When I stepped back into the reception hall, the music had stopped. The guests had thinned. Some wouldn't meet my eyes. Others stared too long, as if trying to memorize the look of a bride abandoned. My father offered to take me home. My mother hovered, her hands twitching as if she could fix this with the right words. But there were no right words. I went back to my apartment alone that night. The flowers from the rehearsal still sat on the counter. The place smelled of roses and disappointment. I took off the dress slowly, not because I wanted to savor anything, but because every zipper, every clasp, felt like undoing the last pieces of the life I thought I had. The next morning, I woke to my phone buzzing, missed calls, texts from numbers I didn't recognize, people asking if I was okay, as if okay was even in the realm of possibility. The story spread fast. Small-town gossip has sharp teeth. By noon, I'd heard 3 different versions of why he left. All wrong, but none as cruel as the truth. I threw myself into small tasks, laundry, dishes, anything to keep from thinking too long about the moment those church doors opened to nothing. But grief has a way of finding you. And every quiet moment was filled with the sound of an empty aisle and the echo of footsteps that never came. At first, I thought my friends would circle around me, that they'd be my shelter from the storm. Some did, but others disappeared. Texts went unanswered. Invitations stopped coming. The people I used to laugh with at late-night dinners now avoided making eye contact in the grocery store. I heard the whispers before I saw the distance, that I must have done something to drive him away, that maybe I was too much, too demanding, too controlling. The narrative shifted without my consent. He became the man who needed space. I became the woman who couldn't keep him. Even my maid of honor began pulling back, not because she didn't believe me, but because being close to me meant being part of the story everyone wanted to dissect. It's a strange thing, how betrayal doesn't just take the person you loved, it takes the people who once stood beside you. The world I'd built felt smaller every day, not because it physically changed, but because the trust, the ease, the knowing that I belonged somewhere, was gone. I learned quickly that some friends love you when you're glowing. Few will stay when you're in pieces. It took me 2 weeks to ask for a meeting, 2 weeks of rehearsing every word, every question I needed answered. We met in a quiet cafe on the edge of town. Neutral ground, somewhere I could leave quickly if I had to. When he walked in, he looked exactly the same shirt he used to wear on our Sunday mornings, the same cologne, the same smile, except now it felt like a mask. I asked him why, not with tears, not with anger, just the question, why? He leaned back, hands clasped, and said it wasn't working, said he didn't want to hurt me. I told him he had, that he'd shattered something that couldn't be put back together. He denied the other woman at first, said she was just a friend. But his eyes shifted in the way liars' eyes always do, searching for a safe place to land. When I pressed, the denial crumbled. He admitted it, but in the same breath tried to make it sound inevitable. Like love had simply changed. There was no apology, not really. Just words meant to soften the edges of what he'd done. But some edges can't be softened. They cut no matter how you try to wrap them. I thought I had already heard the worst. I thought nothing else could cut deeper than the day he left me standing at the altar. I was wrong. It came in the form of an envelope, delivered by mistake to my address instead of his. Inside, printed emails, messages between him and the woman he'd left me for. They weren't just talking about starting a life together. They were planning it before he even proposed to me. There it was. Proof that the proposal, the ring, the wedding planning had all been part of something else. A performance, a cover, to keep her hidden until the moment he was ready to leave. He had never intended to marry me, not once, not even in the early days when I thought we were happy. Reading those words was like watching my past dissolve, every memory suddenly rewired, every "I love you" now a thread in a web meant to trap me in place until he was ready to go. This wasn't just betrayal. It was calculation. Cruel in a way I didn't think he was capable of. And the part that broke me most was realizing he could have told me the truth at any point. But he didn't. Because keeping me in the dark was easier. Because leaving me at the altar gave him the ending he wanted. For weeks, I replayed everything. The first smile, the late-night calls, the proposal under the city lights. They were still vivid in my mind. But now, they felt like scenes from a movie I'd once loved, only to learn the actors hated each other off-screen. I wanted to hate him completely, to erase every trace of what we had. But the truth is, letting go isn't that clean. Love, even when poisoned, leaves behind stubborn roots. Memories that don't know they're unwelcome. So I did the only thing I could. I started pulling them out, one by one. Deleting photos, boxing up the ring, returning the gifts. Not because it erased the pain, but because I needed space for something else to grow. There were nights when the quiet felt unbearable. When I wanted to call him, not to ask for him back, but to demand one last explanation. I never did. Instead, I began writing, journaling every thought, every ache, every small victory. Slowly, the picture of him in my mind began to blur. Not because I forgave him, but because I was finally remembering myself without him in the frame. I didn't know what healing would look like yet, but I knew it would never come if I kept holding on to the version of him that never truly existed. The day I decided to leave it all behind was quiet. No big moment, no dramatic outburst. Just me, standing by the window, watching the afternoon light spill across the floor. I'd been carrying the weight of what happened for so long that I didn't realize how heavy it had become. Every memory, every unanswered question, every empty promise. They had followed me like shadows. But that day, I felt something shift. I gathered the last of his things, the cufflinks he'd left behind, a sweater I once wore on chilly nights, the book we'd read together, pages still marked with my handwriting. I placed them in a box, not to send to him, not to return, but to store away somewhere out of sight, where they could no longer reach me. I walked to the park near my apartment. The air was warm. Children laughed in the distance. Life, it seemed, had gone on without me. And as I sat there, I realized I had survived the thing I thought would break me. Not by forgetting it, but by letting it be part of my story, without letting it be the end. The man who left me at the altar will always be a chapter, a sharp, painful one, but not the whole book. So I whispered my goodbye into the wind, not to him, but to the life I thought we'd have. And for the first time in months, the silence that followed felt like peace. Thank you for reading the whole story. Hope you will support my next products.